Here's two guys that survived a Hall & Oates book signing, Aaron and Jonathan.
Howdy, and welcome to episode 32 of In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. In today's episode, we talk about what's in our pockets. We're your hosts, Aaron
and Jonathan.
You are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Before we begin, a brief announcement. In the Rabbit Hole is now accepting applications for show sponsors. For more information, please use the contact form on the site and choose option Advertise. Now on with the show. Today we're discussing EDC, which stands for Everyday Cary. Simply put, those are the items that you carry with you every day, whether in a bag or in your pocket. In the context of survival, they are things that you carry with you to help you survive the unexpected. These items might include such things as a fire starter, a water bottle, emergency bar, means of self-defense, a cell phone, a digital information packet, basic first aid. These survival items are there to help somebody that already has survival sensibilities, and EDC in an urban context is slightly different from rural or wilderness EDC in the sense that we tend to worry more or focus more on gray. And for those that aren't familiar with what gray is, we'll put a link to our previous episode where we talked about the concept of being gray, which is basically not drawing attention to yourself, blending in. So with that in mind, to go into it for just a second, you're probably not going to carry pepper spray to ward off a bear if you live in the city. You're going to defend yourself from a would-be mugger. You're probably not going to carry a 6-inch bushcraft knife with you. You're probably going to carry a pocket knife under 3 inches. You're probably never going to stab someone with a pocket knife. At least I hope not. But you'd be better prepared to dig junk out of a lock or to cut your pants off that get stuck in an escalator or any number of things that come up in a day. You're probably never going to escape a deep, dark kidnapper's lair using your pen light, but you might use it to find your keys, which I have actually happened where I've dropped my keys or dropped something at night in the grass and had to use my flashlight to find them. EDC items, as was mentioned a few minutes ago, are the things that you carry every day. They're not the things in your bob that sits in the back of your truck or in your car or in your home. These are the things that you keep in a bag on your person with you at all times or in your pockets, whichever you prefer. To tell you a quick story to illustrate the importance of always having things with you, I'll tell a little story on myself. One day I was at the gym and it was the middle of winter, and all of a sudden, while I'm working out, the fire alarm goes off and everybody is ushered out of the building. Now, for years, I had mentally made fun of people that carried backpacks with them into the gym. I didn't really see the point. And even as someone who does normally carry EDC items and has for a long time and is very survival conscious, can't talk today, I still hadn't really given it a lot of thought. Until I'm standing out in the freezing cold in my sweaty gym clothes and shorts and one of those thin Under Armour workout shirts, feeling like a complete boob because everything that I needed to get out of that situation or to make myself more comfortable by not standing out in the cold, waiting for the fire department to figure out what was going on, all of my stuff was sitting in a gym locker. My car keys, my wallet, everything. So from that moment on, that really drove home for me the importance of always having things with you. And now, today, when I go to the gym, I actually do keep a small mesh gym bag with me, and in that bag I keep what I consider to be my most crucial survival items, which are my cell phone, a small pocket knife, my wallet with identification and a list of emergency contact numbers, some cash, and my car keys, which also have a flashlight on them. So that is what EDC does for you. It gets you through those goofy little moments, and that's why it's so important that these items not be things that, well, they're around me every day. Around you, like we talked about in a minute, whether or not it's in your car or, sitting somewhere else, around you is very different from on your person. My locker was technically around me. I did not have access to my locker, so I was forced to stand out in the freezing cold for about 45 minutes with no real way of contacting anyone, catching a cab ride, identifying myself, or any other number of things I might have needed. So I think that kind of explains it enough for people, and that so we don't spend all day beating up the concept of why it's important to have EDC items. Most of the time when we talk about EDC as a community, we're talking about the items you carry with you every day. But the most important aspect of EDC that we're going to address first is your mindset. And that really truly is something you carry with you every day. If you're not carrying it with you every day, chances are good you're no longer listening to a show about survival.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you could have nothing on you, but with the right mindset, you can get yourself out of just about any situation.
Yeah, there's an old saying, and I'm not going to do it any justice, so I'm going to preface that I'm just paraphrasing that. And the ladies, this isn't meant to be sexist. This applies to you too, but I think the way it was told to me was a real man can walk out into the woods naked, come back in 3 days with a knife, being fed, wearing clothes, and riding a horse or something. It may have been goat, I'm not sure. But the point is, with your mind and your wits about you, and as long as you've filled your mind with skills, knowledge, and awareness, you can do just about anything with basically nothing.
Right, coming at it as a healthy individual. So, thinking in terms of that entire chi concept, your community, your health, and your intelligence. This is mostly focused on intelligence, but community and health are important here too. And it's all about your mindset, knowing your surroundings, understanding and trusting your own gut will keep you out of most bad situations.
And let's start with the big topic, that it's a pretty common topic within the community, within law enforcement and any kind of first responders, which is situational awareness. Situational awareness is just that, being aware of what's going on around you, your physical, mental condition, who's around you, the safety of your physical location, the level of potentially volatility of the location you're in, your purpose, and your needs in that moment. It really is just being aware of the world going on around you. For listeners that have listened to us for a long time, I've joked and with a little bit of irritation at my girlfriend that she'll get out of the car and she'll have her cell phone in her ear or something, and she's not paying attention to what's going on around her, the location that she's in, who may be around her potentially. So situational awareness is not just about disasters, it's about everyday life. And this is an Everyday Cary episode, so it stands to reason that situational awareness is something that we need to be mindful of at all times. When you're getting in and out of your vehicle, who's around you? What is the physical condition you're in? What are you doing? Are you doing anything to hamper your ability to be aware of those things around us? And like I've harped on just a second ago, having our cell phones in our ears when we're in situations that could be potentially harmful.
Well, I'll even take it a step further. One of the reasons we're starting the show with the mindset is a lot of people get overconfident with what's in their everyday carry bag or what's in their pockets or what they think they know how to do to defend themselves or take care of themselves. And what that does is it creates I think the term is perception gap. And a perception gap is basically the idea of your assessment of the risks at hand don't actually line up with the facts. So, yeah, you might be the best martial arts expert in the world. So you're walking down that alley confident. You know you can take care of yourself. But the guy who's standing 10 feet away from you with a gun really doesn't care about your martial arts expertise.
Yeah, and even sometimes those martial arts expertise can fail you. I knew a bouncer years ago that was a truly gifted, I imagine he's still around, was a truly gifted martial artist, but somebody slipped up behind him and managed to slip a knife into his back 4 or 5 times, and he spent quite a bit of time in a hospital bed after that. So it is an overconfidence in our abilities, and perception gap is sometimes also, I think we're using it a little bit differently, but there's also normalcy bias, which the two are very closely related. Normalcy bias is essentially the same thing in ignoring the facts of what's going on around you. But normalcy bias is also that bias to what we perceive as being normal, that everything's okay, there's nothing going wrong, life is happy. Maybe you don't think of attacking people, at least I hope you don't think of attacking people on a regular day, robbing them, mugging them, that sort of thing. So it's outside of your mindset that somebody could be hiding behind or around a corner.
Aaron, you're taking all the fun out of my day.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to bring you down. Are you going to be paranoid and freaked out now?
I am, because I was going to go rob and pillage later.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to go rob and pillage. Well, I mean, you should have let me know beforehand. I would have driven up to Austin and come and robbed and pillaged with you. It sounds like a good time.
It's all right. Take that away from me. I hear you.
We are recording in 2 locations today, so if the audio sounds a little different than you're used to hearing, Jonathan is in Austin, I'm in Houston, and we're working our technological magic to bring everything together so that we sound as good as we can.
It's like voodoo, but better.
So going beyond just the everyday mentality, paying attention to your surroundings, here's some simple things. We talked about having a cell phone in your ear and how that does drastically reduce your awareness. I mean, we've all heard the news reports and warnings and everything about driving with it, but the same reasons apply. When you're on a call, you're focused on what's happening on the call. What is the other person saying? And what am I going to say next in response to? So you really do develop blinders while you're talking on a cell phone, and you're not paying attention to what's going on. You get into autopilot, maybe not in the first few minutes of the phone call, but as the phone call goes on, you get wrapped deeper and deeper into that conversation and thinking about what they're saying, and unless you, or sometimes you're wrapped in thought deeper and deeper about trying to ignore what the person is saying. But either way, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, and the same thing applies in regular life as it does in a vehicle. So as you're getting out of your vehicle, hang up the cell phone. As you're getting into a vehicle, hang up the cell phone. Really, I see people walking through parking lots, whether it's day or night, with their cell phone in their ear, and it's like, let the phone call go for just a few minutes. Get to your car, get in your car, get out of your car, do whatever you're doing. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Same thing applies when we're walking into our homes at night or whenever. Is that awareness. When I pull into my driveway, habits I've gotten into are, as I pull into my driveway, the first thing I do is I look at the front door as I'm driving up the driveway. Is there anything unusual about the front door? I don't know. Somebody could have kicked in the front door. If I'm not paying attention and I drive right past a very obvious sign that there is something amiss within my home, then I could very easily pull into the driveway, get out, and walk right into a very bad situation that I completely caught off guard.
Right, and I think, well, there's another part to that, which is that I think most of us totally discount the idea, not actually discount it, the idea of intuition. And when you're paying attention to your surroundings, your intuition is on full alert. You know when something's going wrong. You know when you're being watched. You know when you're being followed. It's not magical. It's not mystical. It comes from the fact that we are all animals and we all evolved from, the same creatures. Your dog knows when you came into the house, and it's not just because they heard a door or a smell. They just know you're there. Same thing happens. You know when people are around you, and people tend to ignore that a lot lately. I think, modern times we're on our cell phones, like Aaron was saying, or we're paying attention to pressing that button to lock our car or whatever it might be, or unlock our car. and you're not paying attention to the feelings you have, the senses that are going on high alert, and the fact that something around you is amiss. And those are things we all need to spend a lot more time doing, or it really doesn't matter what you have in your everyday carry bag.
So moving on to the more physical aspects of everyday carry, because I think we've pretty much covered mindset. And I think everybody has a pretty good understanding of what we're talking about, of being aware, not letting perception gaps happen, not letting normalcy bias take over, all that fun stuff. Let's get into the stuff that people are more used to, which are, what are the items that you carry with you every day and why do you carry them? For me, I am a concealed handgun license holder. I carry my handgun every day. And this is something that drives me nuts. It's a pet peeve, and I'm going to try not to go into a rant about it. But
good luck.
Here's the thing, and I actually know quite a few people that have their concealed handgun license, but they don't carry with them every day. There's multiple aspects to this. The first one is a friend of mine years ago said, I want to get my concealed handgun license. And I said, okay, that's great. Why? And he went into his reasons, and I said, okay, those are valid. And the next question I asked him was, when are you going to carry? Just to make sure. And he said, oh, well, when I'm going to be going into, bad areas or something. And so my next question is, why are you going into bad areas that you think you need, more so than normally, need a gun for? What are you doing?
Right. It's not a requirement of your job. So what do you need to get there for?
The other problem with not carrying every day. Okay, well, the first problem, I should come back and finish addressing that, which is life happens to you when life wants to happen to you. You don't get to pick the moment when bad things happen. I mean, that could kind of be an expression for the entire show, really. But if you're not carrying your gun, life doesn't come along and come to you in the morning while you're sitting at the kitchen table having breakfast and coffee and say, hey, listen, at 3:00, I was thinking about sending a mugger your way.
Aaron, that's twice today that you've shattered my dreams.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I don't mean to wreck your world here.
Oh, man, that's the world that I thought we lived in.
But it's true. If somebody is coming, Jonathan, to schedule, let me know, because evidently I'm missing something here in life that no one is scheduling. I
have only had bad events scheduled.
Oh,
if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't happen.
I say that all the time. So there's the part behind that, the reasoning, the mindset behind it. If you're going to carry it with you always, because you don't know. I mean, that's the whole point. You got the handgun license and the handgun, and hopefully lots of training behind that, was so that when life unexpectedly does sneak up and try to bite you on the butt, you're ready for it in the most prepared way you can be. And moving beyond that, gun safety actually plays a part in this. The safest place for your gun is on your body. Years ago, when I first started carrying, I didn't really think about this or know anything about it. Nobody ever really talked to me about it, which was the idea that when I put on my gun in the morning, I leave the home. When I would come home at night, I would immediately take it off. Or if I would get to my office, I would take it off. So I was constantly getting up, moving around, and doing things, and I'd forget it and go to lunch without it. And so we're back to what was the point of having it if I don't always have it with me, since life doesn't schedule, unless you're Jonathan, doesn't schedule bad things. So having it with you means not taking it off until it's time to disrobe and go to bed. If you're sitting in your living room and you've immediately come home, taken it off, set it in your nightstand, gone back over to watch TV or whatever, what happens if there's a break-in? Again, we're at a point where life didn't schedule things with you. What was the point of having that? What was the point of going through all the trouble of the training and the expense and everything else to not have it with you? Are you going to say, oh, excuse me, Mr. Robber, I seem to have forgotten my firearm in my nightstand. If you can just give me a moment, I'll be right back and be prepared for this.
Right. And in all seriousness, I have a similar view to yours. There are times now, and we're not telling you that if you have a job that doesn't allow you to have a concealed carry, don't carry. There's some. We're not telling you to go break the rules or anything like that. And we're also saying if your area does not permit concealed carry, definitely don't concealed carry.
Yeah, stay within the law.
Right. Stick within the law, stick within the boundaries of whatever employment agreements you have. In addition to that, we also do not condone concealed carry without extensive training. A untrained person with a gun is not a useful tool to anyone. So if you do plan to carry, make sure you get the appropriate training. And this goes for if you carry a gun for defensive purposes, get the appropriate training. If you think that your knife is for defensive purposes, get the appropriate training. Even if you're going to use mace, go take a self-defense class. Most of them do teach you the proper use of mace or pepper spray or any of those tools. But do not carry if you don't intend to get trained. Because if you do so and you don't know how to properly use the tool, you can actually, in the long run, cause more harm to yourself than you would have by not having the tool.
Exactly. The final aspect to always having, and I hinted at it a second ago, always having your firearm on your person is that if your gun is on your person, without wrestling you to the ground and taking it from you, no one can mess with it. So if you have children in your home or something of that fashion, if you just go lay it in your nightstand or whatever, that gun is now unattended. Even if you go put it in a safe, we're back to what was the point of having it. It is not now accessible. But if that gun is on your body, your children can't get to it, somebody else's children can't get to it, it is under your watchful eye. Unless you're just completely numb from the neck down, I would be hard-pressed to see how somebody would mess with it while it was on your person.
Right. And again, to that point, so now we've made the decision. You've gotten trained. You went and got your CHL license. You're carrying it regularly, if not daily. So going about the choice, so we did have a show on gun selection, handgun selection. There are a lot of options out there. One of the things I will say right now is go out and you have to feel it. You have to hold the gun. You have to see how it feels in your hand. The appropriate gun for carry is going to be one that you are comfortable with. So don't let anyone tell you that because it's a full-size pistol, you can't carry it. That's not true. Aaron carries a mid-size pistol every day, and it's actually quite a large one. I mean, it's not the smallest mid-size out there. It's almost a full-size. I carry a small revolver on a regular basis, but when I'm not carrying that, I actually carry pretty much a full-size 1911 or a Browning high power.
And I think on occasions you've also carried a Smith & Wesson UDC 44 Magnum.
Yes, no, that was just to prove a point, though, to some friends.
Yeah.
So we had some friends. I purchased it was just one that I wanted. Okay, it was a 44 Magnum UDC. Not for the intention of carrying it every day, but there are some things we have to get because we want them. And that was one of those things. But a buddy of ours was telling me that there's no way you could carry that, not concealed. So I went about and carried it for an entire week concealed. And I mean the exact way Aaron just described. Day in, day out. From the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, I was carrying that full-size 44 Magnum. Nobody ever noticed I had it on me. And actually nobody, including my friend who had basically bet me that I wouldn't be able to do it, noticed. I had to actually pull him to the side and show him that I'd been carrying it. So depending on who you are and how you're built, some of these things change. But the reality is you have to carry a weapon you're comfortable with and not one you carry just because you think it's a comfortable gun to carry. Using another story of another friend of ours, a large guy. Okay, he's about, what would you say he is, Aaron? 6'2", 6'3"?
Yeah, Jason's about, he's actually been on the show a few times. Jason McConnell he's about 6'2", he's 6'2", 6'3", and 275.
And he went and bought one of the very, very small pocket semi-autos in a 380. Found it to be extraordinarily uncomfortable to shoot. And ended up going back to carrying a mid-size CZ 75. So it again goes back to you may end up wasting a lot of money buying the gun you think you're supposed to carry instead of the one you actually should be carrying.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about calibers, which we're not really going to get into today, we've done a whole show with Robert from Talon Arms about caliber and pistols and stuff like that. We'll put a link to that in the show notes if you haven't heard it before and you want to go back and listen to it. But don't be afraid to carry a small caliber pistol. It's what is most comfortable to you. What are you actually going to carry every day? Because I know I used to carry a Smith & Wesson 4006. It was a beautiful gun, but it was a boat anchor. It was stainless steel. The thing weighed a ton. I mean, if I ran out of bullets, I could just beat somebody to death with that thing if I didn't tire myself out first.
That's why I liked the 44 mag.
Yeah. Yeah, you could use that thing as a boat anchor.
Yep.
For the Titanic.
Yeah, that's just the bullets.
Yeah, exactly. So don't fret too much over caliber. It's really, these days, it really boils down to more about ammunition. All handguns within the distance that you're going to be potentially engaging in an altercation, the calibers are all going to do pretty much just fine. No one likes getting shot. Yeah, we've all heard the story. Oh, well, the guy was hopped up on PCP and crack and tactical Weimaraner dust, and just took like 80 rounds from 3 cops. Well, yeah, all right, those are extreme circumstances, but barring those, using good quality defensive ammo like Hornady makes, Critical Defense, Corbon has, DPX, Jonathan?
I think it's DPX. They have a few.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton out there, and they're all, any of the premier brands make really good defensive ammo, and they're all going to get the job done. I know, Jonathan, you usually carry 38 special, so
Yeah, I do. I carry a 38 special using Hornady Critical Defense, and historically, I think in modern times or in the last 20 years, people don't necessarily think of that as a big caliber gun, but it worked for about 100 years as a law enforcement caliber. And so if it was good enough for 100 years, why isn't it good enough today, especially with modern ammunition technology? If you see the ballistics on it, it's great. But again, so I don't want to go too far into the gun discussion on this particular show, because we could probably talk for hours and hours.
Oh, absolutely.
But it is a big part, and it's one we hear so much about. So we're always asked whenever we talk about everyday carry, we're not necessarily talking about everyday carry of a weapon or even knives or mace or anything like that. We're really talking about everyday carry of what you should have on you on a day-to-day basis to deal with the normal things that come up in life. And for us, we feel like having a self-defense weapon on us is a useful tool to have in everyday life. But those are decisions you have to make, because again, that goes back to, if you're not willing to use the tool you have, then you shouldn't have the tool on you.
Which brings us to knives, another tool. Now, I carry a knife every day, and Jonathan carries a knife every day.
I think I even had a rant about it on one of our shows.
Yes, you did have a rant. I don't remember what episode that was.
Yeah. In general, I think everyone should.
It's a long forgotten thing that people used to carry them, and for good reason. They are very useful tools. I think even Tom Brown, who's kind of one of the godfathers of wilderness survival, when asked if you could go out into the woods and only had one thing, what would it be? And his answer to that was, well, if I have to take something, it would be a knife. Because knives are so versatile and so useful, even in our daily lives, just all kinds of things, trimming off that random thread that is hanging off your clothes, or opening a box, or opening a letter, or whatever it is.
Yeah, nothing's more frustrating than getting that box from Amazon with your brand new whatever it is and not being able to open it up quickly.
Yeah. And so we'll talk very briefly, because we are going to bring on a guest in the near future to really go into knives. But the knives we're talking about today are not necessarily for self-defense. That's not why we carry. We carry them because they are useful tools for the things that we engage in every day, like Jonathan was saying, opening packages and such. So with that in mind, there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of variations of those choices for types of knives you can carry. The big thing is to be aware of your local laws. I know in Houston, the laws are pretty liberal. I think the length that you can have is 3 1/4. But then again, you get into other areas, like we were going through San Antonio a couple years back, and one of the people on the road trip was kind of reminded everybody, hey, by the way, any kind of locking blade is illegal here. So we all had to take our pocket knives off, because all of us have locking blade pocket knives, and put them up. So you need to be aware of your local laws, and be aware again of where you are, who you're around, things like that.
Yeah, you'll also find that, especially with knives, over time, you'll be in situations where you'll say, well, I want to bring my pocket knife, but that one's not going to work for the situation. So knowing where you're going to be all day. So if you're going to be in an office all day, then you don't necessarily want a big speed opening, tactical looking knife. I mean, get a nice gentleman's folder. And for the ladies, they make very equivalent women's folders. If you're going to be in a warehouse all day, well, carry whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever's useful for the job. But again, you don't want to necessarily, going back to, we had a gray discussion at one point, staying within that concept of not sticking out like a sore thumb. Don't draw additional attention to yourself just because you carry a tool with you.
Yeah. And going into selection a little bit, and I think, Jonathan, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about, the tactical knives a second ago, which was a story about myself. I had a Kershaw speed opening knife that had a Tonto blade, and it was all black. And that's not why I bought it. I bought it because I genuinely like the knife, and it's a really good knife. I didn't buy it for the way it looked. But I started thinking about it, and I know every time I pulled it out, I would get a reaction from people. And so I did end up setting the knife aside, and I still have the knife, and I still on occasion use the knife if I'm going to be in an appropriate situation, but I traded it out for a knife that was much more practical for everyday carry. It had a blade style that was very non-aggressive. It's a sheep's foot blade style, which doesn't really have a point on it. It had a seatbelt cutter on it and a glass breaker on it. The kind of things that if I really was going to get in an emergency that would actually be useful. So really think long and hard about the knife, that if you do choose to carry a knife, which I do recommend that you do, think long and hard about what are you using this knife for. And don't worry so much about the way it looks. Worry more about what are you going to be using it for, who you're going to be around, things like that.
I would, yeah. And to that point, I also, for weekend carry, I carry a large, it's made by Kershaw, but the sub brand is Zero Tolerance. And it's a great knife, but it's very large. I can't carry that to the office every day. So I have a lot of very nice custom knives, but for whatever reason in my own head, I got to get past it. You buy a nice knife and then you don't want to use it for anything. So I went out and got a knife that I actually do carry every single day, whether I have another one on me or not, just because it's such a useful tool. And it's the Spyderco Cricket. Great little knife, all stainless steel, made of really high quality steel. It's not just stainless steel, it's a high quality stainless steel. And they're relatively inexpensive. They're about $60. They will last you forever because the handle's stainless. It's a nice little lock, but they're nice, small, easily fits in your pocket, almost works as a money clip. And they're great. And that's what I carry every day in the office. They're great for opening boxes, dealing with opening letters, just the simple tasks. And if you get a chance, as a listener, go out and take a look. Go look at the Zero Tolerance, and then go look at the Spyderco Cricket. And you'll see that I went from, they're two very different styles. And you could carry either one, whatever you're comfortable with on a day-to-day basis, but carry something. It's useful to have a knife with you. It's a great tool. Nothing beats it for day-to-day use. You will be amazed when you have one, how many times you use it and how many times someone around you says, "Does anyone have a knife?" It's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of like carrying a multi-tool. All of a sudden you realize all these things throughout a day that pliers were useful for, or a screwdriver was useful for, especially if you're not somebody that normally walks around with pliers and a screwdriver.
Yep.
But one last thing I'd like to talk about with knives is knives as a defensive weapon. Knives are getting into a fight if you do not have really good training, and even if you've got really good training with a knife, knives are not a very good defensive weapon. They require you to be in very close proximity to the other person. If you have a knife, chances are good if you get into altercation and you have a knife, you're going to get cut in some form or fashion also. So for those that out there that do have the proper training and everything else, that's fantastic. But for the rest of the audience that doesn't have a lot of experience with using a knife, taking a knife away from somebody else, arresting, hand-to-hand arresting techniques, things like that, it's, don't bet the farm on, I got this great knife and I'm going to be able to protect myself with that. It's right. Go get training.
Yep.
Moving on to less than lethal tools. So mace. And mace is, I got to admit, I should carry mace, but I don't carry mace. So I'm going to rely on Jonathan today to really talk about mace, because I know you and your wife, you ended up getting mace for your wife.
Right. I don't actually have mace, but I got some for Karen because she has a personal aversion to carrying a handgun every day, and it's really a training issue for her. She knows that she has not had the time to go get training, and that's, she knows that's not an excuse either, so she doesn't even use it as an excuse. She just says, look, I don't have the training, therefore I shouldn't carry a gun. So I went out, and because I wanted her to have something, I actually went out and got her the Kimber pepper spray. And as many of you know, Kimber is a great handgun company. They make 1911s. Well, they also make a fantastic pepper spray. It's one of the best in the world. That's rated very, very well. I'm sure we're going to get messages saying this one's better, that one's better. You can use whichever one you want. I recommend, in the case of buying mace for a loved one or for yourself, one that has an explosive charge. And what that means is there's some charge inside of it that allows it to propel the mace or the pepper spray at a much further distance, at least 10 feet. So you want to go 7 to 10 feet, because most altercations begin within 7 feet. So knowing you can get just beyond 7 feet is a good idea. You also want one that will allow you to fire at least twice. So the Kimber has 2 charges. First time you pull the trigger, it releases the first charge, and the second time you pull the trigger, it's the second charge. After that, you throw it and run. They're extremely effective. The reason you want the 2 charges, though, is that there is a chance you miss the first time, or the wind blows.
Or multiple attackers.
Or there's multiple attackers. This is another thing to think about with the explosive charge. If you are in a windy situation and you're upwind, an explosive charge will propel the pepper spray away from you, but you do need to consider some of it will blow back in your direction. So you have to the advantage you have is that you know what's coming. The attacker doesn't. So it gives you an advantage in the situation and allows you to get away. You may be in pain, but you'll get away. But again, that's the one I went with. I'm not telling you that's the be-all, end-all of pepper sprays. What I am telling you is some things to consider are the explosive charges that propel at a further distance. I also know there are now some pepper spray gels. They don't have the blowback issues. So you may want to consider some of those. But again, make sure they have at least 2 charges. An explosive charge so they can propel the right distance. And there's something that's small enough, compact enough, and easy enough to use for the person you care about or yourself to actually utilize. Because you don't want something that's so complicated it requires you to flip a lever, pull a switch, and then do something. You want something that you can point and shoot. And you want it to be very simple. That's the other thing I liked about the Kimber. It's very much, if you have any hand-eye coordination whatsoever, whatever you're pointing at is what you're going to hit. It becomes an extension of your hand. So it's a great tool. I highly recommend it. And for anyone who has an aversion to carrying a firearm or lives in an area where the law won't allow you to do so, it's a good alternative. Now, that said, make sure you understand your local laws, because pepper sprays and maces are regulated in some areas.
Another aspect that I've become aware of with pepper sprays and maces is that they do have expiration dates, and that those expiration dates really do mean a lot.
No, that's a great point. You want to make sure that when that expiration date is approaching, not there yet, but approaching, that you've already gone through the process of ordering your new product or going out and buying the new one, so that when the time comes, you just swap them out and it's seamless.
So for some of you who just heard us go on and on about guns and briefly about knives, why mace? Well, most altercations in life do not require lethal force. Most altercations require less than lethal force, which is what mace is. You shoot a guy trying to mug you. Well, you had it coming, as the old expression goes. But maybe that was unnecessary. Maybe,
and then you have to live with it.
Well,
so
yeah, there's the psychological aspects.
Right.
There's also every bullet has a lawyer attached to it, as our friend Dan Blackford likes to say, who's been on the show before and teaches concealed handgun classes. That's something to be mindful of. That there's other instances, a stray dog is coming up to you or attacking you, or there's a good reason why mailmen carry mace. It's not because people are attacking them for their mail. If all you have is a gun, everything will look like a violent altercation requiring lethal force. But if you give yourself other options, which is why I was kind of beating up on myself a little bit for not carrying mace. So if the gun is all you have with you, that is your only option, is to engage in lethal force.
Right. Mace and pepper spray give you some choices. But one thing I do want to say, and I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I just wanted to get this in there. A lot of you are probably asking, well, what's the difference between mace and pepper spray? So I just actually, while I'm thinking about it, I quickly want to cover that. Pepper spray is actually what you want. So mace is really just an irritant. It's basically tear gas. And if somebody comes up on you, and the reality is a lot of crimes are perpetrated by people who are on some form of narcotics or other forms of drugs. Pepper spray will actually cause enough pain, because it's an inflammatory agent and an irritant, that it will even stop someone who's on most drugs. Because the amount of pain, it's not just a pain issue. It actually causes an inflammation, forcing the eyes to close and the throat to start closing up. Versus mace, which just causes your eyes to itch and tear up. It's painful, but it's not necessarily causing a physical reaction. Or it is a physical reaction, but it's not really causing as much of a physical reaction. So while you're looking at items, don't really look at mace. Pepper spray is the way to go. Most police forces have gone to pepper spray. And I think if you read from any of the journals on defense, pepper spray is the way to go. So that's the big one. I just wanted to make sure that was in there. And the Kimber product I talked about is pepper spray.
Going on to unconventional weapons, and this, again, will be a topic that for most people requires some training. I don't know how many of you saw, there was an instance where a crazed gunman burst in on, I think it was a school board or a city council or something, and started threatening the city board, and a woman came up behind the guy and tried to hit him over the head with her purse. It was extremely ineffective. So,
to say the least.
It just kind of, I actually thought the guy was going to start laughing. I mean, kudos to that woman. She was incredibly brave for what she did. I mean, she ran up behind an armed gunman who was obviously out of his mind and tried to take him out with her purse. It was very impressive display of bravery on her part. However, it was very ineffective. So, when it comes to unconventional weapons, there are basically, the first thing you need to understand about unconventional weapons is that everything around you, quite literally everything around you, can be used as a weapon. Water bottles are a fantastic weapon, but these things all require training. So if it's something you're interested in, seek out. There's Krav Maga classes, there's, most of the different martial arts houses will teach some form of self-defense using unconventional weapons. I think one of the ones that the dojo that I go to is, but it's actually part of the martial art, is the use of rope and water bottles and things like that. So it's everything around, trying to learn to use things around you as a weapon. And they are a tool, and with all tools require some level of training. So anyway, moving past that, because we don't want to spend all day talking about weapons, because then it just sounds like we're going out to do battle with the world, which is not.
And for those of you who think that that's what the whole show was about, it wasn't. But what I want to say is, we get so many requests to talk about that aspect of it that we had to make sure we covered it.
Yeah. And
there are so many more important things, actually, in my mind, that you would carry on a day-to-day basis. Because if you think about that, Aaron's talked about this a lot, but the disaster matrix, what's the likelihood of different things to happen in your life? There are a lot of things much more likely to occur to you than somebody attacking you.
And those things might be credit cards stop working because there's been a rolling blackout.
Even down to something stupid like you're going to be late to an appointment. What do you have on you that will allow you to either inform somebody or get there? Or, you need certain tools just on a day-to-day basis to make sure your life gets to maintain a certain level of normalcy no matter what happens.
Yeah. So let's talk about cash for a second. How much cash should you carry on your person? Well, I think that's up to the individual. Mm-hmm. For me, I carry a certain amount of cash, but I also carry a $100 bill tucked away, separate from my normal bundle of cash. What cash allows you to do is cash allows you to buy something at all times. Credit cards do not. There's some caveats there if you're going to go rent a car or something like that. But cash is king. If you have cash and there's a situation, you're going to be taken care of just fine. Whereas power outages, things like that can affect, even if you just walk into a store just to get something and their credit card terminal is down, they're still going to be able to take cash from you, where everybody else is kind of SOL as it goes.
Right. Hey, you're in a bad part of town. You get a bad feeling and your car's not anywhere nearby, but a cab's coming by. All cabs take cash. Not all of them take credit cards. Very
true. Cash, I think, is these days so few people actually carry cash on them, and it is so important. It's, we've become, as a society, just so dependent on plastic, to the point of just ridiculous, in my opinion. So $20, in my opinion, is the minimum, because $20 will pretty much, as Jonathan just said, as far as a cab ride goes, will pretty much get you from wherever you are to a point of at least safety.
Right.
$20, you're not going to eat like a king, but for $20, that'll feed you for a day or two. And in most instances, if you're in a really bad situation. So these are part of the reasons that cash is so important, and having that cash. The credit card company can cut off your credit cards. They can't cut off your cash that you have in hand. And I've never been to a store that doesn't take cash. So moving on past cash, there's your wallet, and these really are separate topics. Your wallet is, so much of our lives are in our wallets or our billfolds or whatever you want to refer to it as, and that what should be in there? Well, your identification, for one, should be in there. A handwritten list in some sort of indelible permanent ink of important telephone numbers. Your cell phone could die. You could drop it in the toilet. God, how many people do I know that have dropped their cell phone in the toilet? It's hysterical. But it happens, and if you're in a weird situation, that is the last thing you need, where you've got that lifeline, that cell phone, which we'll come to in a second as EDC, is your lifeline, and something happens to it and you're no longer able to use it. Well, that's your phone. That's not every phone. Every phone in the world stopped working, but I think an interesting phenomenon, as cell phones have become so prevalent in our society, most of us don't know the telephone numbers of anyone around us. I actually couldn't even tell you what the first three numbers of Jonathan's telephone number at the top of my head.
Yeah, and we've known each other forever, and yes. I couldn't tell you Aaron's either. Now, here's another one. You may not be the one who needs those phone numbers.
Exactly.
So don't make your list cryptic. Make it very clear. Put a name, what the relationship of that person is to you, and the phone number. Because if something happens to you, and you could have an allergic reaction you never even knew you were going to have, and when that ambulance driver is looking through your wallet to see who they can contact, and they will do that, you want them to have that list so that they can call your next of kin, your loved one, somebody who can make sure you get the best care possible.
Your wallet also is going to contain your ID, which again is extremely important if you have any kind of medical conditions. So your driver's license is going to have any kind of medical alerts on it outside of the more esoteric stuff that you would wear a medical alert bracelet or necklace for, and any kind of allergies. Well, that tells first responders an awful lot. That also tells first responders or any would-be good citizens that come to help you out who you are, where you live. So it gives them something. You're not just a nameless stranger passed out, stranded on the street from heat or from a car wreck or from whatever. So don't underestimate the importance of carrying identification with you.
Some other things you might want to carry outside your wallet, of course. Small fire starting device. It can be something as simple and cheap as a Bic lighter from a gas station. You can step it up to get so there's some really nice tiny stainless steel lighters. There's one called the Stainless Peanut from a company called CountyCom. They make a great one. But something like that. And the reason I say that is you never know when a car might break down and where you might be when it happens. It does not take a very cold temperature to get hypothermia. And if you're stuck somewhere overnight, the ability to start a fire is just absolutely the one thing that can save your life if you really are in the middle of nowhere. And if you can get that fire going at night, well, one, it's going to draw attention. Two, it's going to keep you warm. So I highly recommend some type of small fire starting device, a lighter, for lack of a better word, somewhere on your person. I'm not a smoker, and I still keep one of those small County Com stainless peanut lighters in my pocket. Another thing, a simple first aid kit. So it doesn't have to be, you do not need to carry a medical bag. I'm not recommending that every one of you pretend to be a doctor and start carrying a scalpel, a surgical kit, or a suturing kit. All of those things are great, but most of you, I'm going to guess, don't have the training to use it. I don't have the training to use it. I'd love to, but I don't. So what I make sure I have on me, at least within my briefcase or my messenger bag or whatever I have on me at the time, is a small commercially purchased first aid kit. You can get them from REI, from Target. There's all kinds of, Walmart has them.
Red Cross.
Just a small one. Red Cross has great ones. But mine's just the small personal kit. I think mine's the personal kit for 3 people, so it actually has a little bit more stuff in it. But even when I don't have that, in my wallet is actually a Band-Aid brand Band-Aid, just in case I need it. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but it's the one with the antibiotic built in, so I don't have to carry an extra little antibiotic tube, just in case. Because you are a lot more likely to get a splinter than you are to need a suturing kit. Not that I, Band-Aid myself for splinters or anything, but, you never know. A small cut, might need a Band-Aid, good to have. I've got one with me at all times in my wallet, and in my briefcase or in my messenger bag, I've got a slightly larger medical kit that has more stuff in it. I also like to carry with me some aspirin. I actually have BC powder in my bag, which is great. If you have a headache, it usually takes care of it very quickly. For those of you not familiar with it, you can get it from Amazon.com, really cheap, in bulk.
And moving on to cell phones, communication. How critical is communication these days? I mean, we live and breathe in cell phones, and it's almost kind of a funny thing to even talk about cell phones as EDC. But what's important in the conversation about EDC is not the cell phone itself, it's the support system behind the cell phone. Do you have a spare charging cable? Do you have a way and a means to charge and keep that phone charged in bad situations? I know during hurricanes, that's a lot of what we've seen whenever Houston has been without power, are people going out trying to figure out how to power their cell phones, how to get their cell phones charged. They would go to neighbors that had generators, or they would stop repairmen on the side of the road that were using. I actually did see a bunch of people where repairmen were doing something on power lines or a telephone junction box or whatever, and they had a generator, and the person was like, please, can I just use a little bit of power for just a few minutes, just enough to get a little bit so I can tell people I'm okay. And when I say that, I'm not talking about necessarily carrying around a big solar panel like the Juice Orange. I mean, if you have the space and you want to carry it around, I think they're great. I think those little solar chargers are fantastic. But there's also quite a few chargers on the market that will just take a couple of AA batteries. And then that's a very easy, cheap way of doing it. Even within your vehicle, do you have a second charger? Do you have a charger in your bag that you carry with you every day if you carry a bag? So it's that support system that is really important in the conversation. Can you facilitate going a day or two without being able to get to normal means of power to take care of keeping that cell phone charged? Because that cell phone really may be the thing that saves your life in a sideways situation.
Especially since so many of them have GPS now and text message. You can text your location. So as long as you have any coverage at all, and I do mean even the smallest amount of coverage will get you a text message out. And then you can attach that with a GPS location, since so many smartphones have that now. So yeah, cell phone is definitely critical. Now, the thing I like to also add to the list, your personal information. And what I mean by that is everything from copies of your identification all the way to the deed to your house, maybe the deed to your car, and everything in between. Okay, so if you just a copy of your passport, your personal information. Now, this is not stuff I recommend you just keep out for everyone to see. I'm recommending you put it on a small USB key. My personal preference there, and I know Aaron's got one too and loves his, is the Tough and Tiny.
Yeah, I've actually got a couple, one of which I actually use to keep copies of the show on that we've just done.
Yeah, they're great little tools, and they're relative. You can get a 16 gigabit version of it for something like $30 right now, and we'll post a link to it. But I keep a copy of all the information I was just talking about, from the deed to my house to copies of all my identification, all my wife's information. Now, I keep it all on there, and you would think, well, that's a huge security nightmare, right? It's not. And the reason it's not is I have it all on a secured file that I have encrypted using a product called TrueCrypt. TrueCrypt is completely free. You can go out to the web and download it for just about any operating system that's out there. They'll probably have a version that works with my latest version of my Mac OS too very soon. Right now it doesn't work with Lion, but it will soon. And what that product does is it allows you to create an encrypted volume. And what that really means is it's a volume that almost nobody can get into. And it encrypts it in a security layer that can be even more powerful than what the federal government uses for top secret documents. You can encrypt it to 10 times that if you really want to. And to put that into numbers, if you encrypted it just what the US government uses, it would take you 100,000 plus years to be able to break into the document. If you use more encryption than that, the amount of time grows exponentially. So you want to encrypt more, go for it, make it take 1 million years. But no matter what happens, the way I look at it is the way my documents are encrypted, it's going to take more than my lifetime to get into those documents, which would pretty much make those documents useless.
Yeah.
But I have those with me at all times. It's just on my keychain. And then I keep a secure backup also encrypted on my computer, which is with me a lot. As Aaron knows, I tend to travel with it a lot now, especially now that I'm going back and forth between Houston and Austin. And all the important information I have on there is also encrypted. So I've got the data in a few places, but it's all secure. I highly recommend that to anyone. So if for some reason you're mudslides in California and had to leave your home, if you need to show proof that you live there for whatever reason, you have the information with you. Yeah, it may force you to go to a public library and open that information and print it, but you still know you have access to it. It's yours.
It's not gone forever or lost or damaged or anything like that.
Right. It's not paper, so you're not going to lose it, and you have it in more than one place, so it's safe. And for your paper documents that you want true security on, make sure they go in a safe place too, like a safety deposit box. And then with these types of encrypted files, you've got those on you, but the documents are also safe.
And for listeners that are newer to the show, we have an article on how to prepare a personal information packet. Now, the article itself did not go into how to turn that into a digital information packet, but it goes through the basics of what you should consider putting in your information packet and basically how to pull it all together, which we will link to in the show notes today. It's a great reference, very popular article.
And for those of you interested in the topic of how to secure those files and everything, start a discussion in the forums, and Aaron and I will enter and add information as needed. But I know we've got a lot of smart people out there in the forums who definitely have the knowledge to help with this as well.
Absolutely. Flashlights are a fairly important part of EDC kits. The reason being, there are a ton of instances where, like I talked about in the beginning, you drop your keys in the grass in the middle of the night, or you need to go looking for something, or there's all kinds of little instances. And it's one of those items that you never really think about how useful it is until you have one with you, and then you find little uses for it constantly once you do have one, just like a multi-tool or a pocket knife. Without going into long, painful detail about all the different flashlights that are out there, I think the most popular kind within the survival and tactical community tend to be these Surefire style tactical flashlights, which are great, and I own a couple and I love them. I keep one by my bed, but I don't carry one with me every day or constantly. I carry one in my bag that I take with me pretty much every day, but I don't carry one on my person because I find them to be bulky. And if you don't find them to be bulky, then by all means go ahead. But there's a lot of options. We had the review of the Streamlight Nano, which can go on your keychain or a zipper or anything, and it's a very small little flashlight, and it's got batteries. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. They're very small. They're very useful. They tend to last a pretty long time. Their batteries are not very expensive. I mean, they're basically like watch hearing aid batteries, so I guess they're like $5 for a pack or something, if that. There's nothing wrong with larger flashlights. I mean, if you have the room in your pockets and if it's what you want and you feel the need to have a brighter or more robust flashlight, then by all means go ahead. And there is a case to be made for the more robust flashlights, which is that if you needed to, you could use them as a glass breaker if you get, trapped in your car or whatever. There, you can imagine on your own the instances in which that might be helpful. But kind of going along with the concept of flashlights, there's something that, I don't think I've ever seen anybody really talk about, which is batteries in EDC. So we just talked about carrying a flashlight, but there's a lot of things that you probably carry on your person throughout a day that require batteries, disposable batteries, most likely. What are you going to do if you're out somewhere and your car alarm remote stops working? Well, for most of us, even though we still have the keys and we can still open the door, that won't disengage the alarm. And most vehicles that have that kind of alarm also have an ignition kill that you can't get rid of without the car alarm remote. And to drive this point home, I'll tell you another story. It was actually my father who was out canoeing one day, and he tipped his canoe over in the water and had his keys in his pocket. Don't ask me why. I have no idea what possessed him to do that without putting them in a Ziploc bag or something, but we all do goofy things from time to time. Anyway, he got the thing wet, completely killed the battery, called me up. Luckily, he and I drive the same kind of truck, and I do carry the batteries for my car alarm remote with me everywhere I go. And actually, I have lots of them stashed. I have a couple in my truck, I have a couple in my bag, and I have a couple in my office and a few in my home. I keep a selection. I mean, I like to cache things. It just makes life a little bit easier sometimes when I do forget to carry them with me. But I was able to go pop open his remote, dry it out, pop in a new battery, and off he went. He couldn't go anywhere, though, until I got there. He was stuck. He had no way to open the car alarm remote. He had no battery with him. And without the battery to that car alarm remote, the ignition was dead. There was no way for him to start his car. Luckily, he had his cell phone, and however, that did not get wet. And we'll come to cell phones very briefly in a little bit. But consider carrying batteries for, we have all these different things that require batteries. If you're carrying a flashlight, carry a couple little extra, at least one extra set of batteries, or you can get away with one extra battery, and that'll give you a few hours of life. It won't give you the full span of life out of your flashlight, but at least it'll give you a couple more hours of light. What's becoming very popular these days are car alarm remote style remotes for your home alarm. While that's not that big of a deal because you can still, unlike a car, you will have a keypad within your home that you can walk into and change. It's still just a good practice to have it with you. But I think you get the idea, and I don't think this is not a subject that I think we need to beat up and spend all day talking about batteries. But so to kind of wrap up the show, what EDC really means is the things that you carry with you every day, whether those are on your person or in a bag. And while it's every day and not every minute, that really is items that you should be carrying. These are the items that you carry with you on a constant basis and not things that you kind of ho-hum, well, maybe I'll take this, or maybe I'll take this, or maybe I'll leave this home today. It's the things that you carry with you, the most useful tools. And you don't need to walk around looking like Batman, so you don't have to have a giant utility belt with all kinds of stuff on it. But they're the simple tools, mostly your mind, that will get you through most of life's challenges. And with that, we wrap up episode 32. Thank you for joining us. Help support In the Rabbit Hole Urban Survival Podcast and blog. We're now accepting applications for show sponsors. For more information, please use the contact form on the site and choose option Advertise. If you like the podcast, make sure to leave us a review in iTunes. It helps others find us. If you didn't, well, why not tell us about it using the contact form on the site? Seriously, the show is for you, the listener. Be sure to connect with us through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the Urban Survival Forum through the links on the top right-hand side of the site at www.intherabbithole.com and on the forum, forum.intherabbithole.com. Also, don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. By connecting with us, you receive updates about the site and notifications of new articles and podcast episodes. That's right, we're not just a podcast. Every week, articles are posted to the site in therabbithole.com that cover all manner of topics relating to surviving in an urban environment, whether in good times or in extreme circumstances. Show notes are posted with each episode where we invite you to comment on the show and interact with us. From Houston, Texas. Till next time, stay safe and sound.